when we thoroughly test the human being. Allah says about Himself, when His Lord, Rabbuhu, thoroughly tests the human being. In the Arabic language, there's a word for testing, imtahana. Imtahana, like for example, فَأُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ امْتَحَنَ اللَّهُ فِي قُلُوبِهِمُ التَّقْوَى. That word, imtahana in Arabic, means to test someone without putting them through pain. Then there's bala, like إِنَّا بَلَوْنَاهُمْ, right? كَمَا بَلَوْنَا أَصْحَابَ الْجَنَّةِ. And that word bala means to test someone with some difficulty, a harsh kind of testing. Then there's ibtila, which is to test someone with the worst kind of testing. Like really rigorous, difficult, harsh kind of testing. This is the kind of testing that word is used for Ibrahim alayhi salam, because his tests were pretty tough. So Allah Azza wa Jalla says, وَإِذِ ابْتَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ رَبُّهُ بِكَلِمَاتٍ. Right? So that's the tough word. Now Allah uses that word for tough testing, that rigorous kind of testing, and He says, how does He test him? فَأَكْرَمَهُ وَنَعَّمَهُ. He's testing him, and as a result, first of all, He causes him to be honored. Ikram in Arabic is to cause someone to be honored. Karuma in Arabic, to be honored in and of yourself. And no one is called kareem in lughatan, nobody's called noble in Arabic, unless that nobility is recognized by others. So you don't just call a person noble. The word kareem you don't use for them anyway. You use it when other people start showing them respect. Now this is kareem. Or other people start commenting good things about their character and stuff like that. Now this person has kirama. Allah Azza wa Jalla says, the first tough test Allah gives this person is that He makes him respectable and noble and distinguished in society. He earns a kind of distinction in society, a prestige. So He makes him worthy of prestige in society. How is this tough? This seems like this is a good thing. And on top of this He adds, subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَنَعَّمَهُ. Other places in the Quran we find وَأَنْعَمَ أَنْعَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمَا. Right? صِرَاطَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمْتَ. In'am. This is tan'een. This is a different pattern in the Arabic language. Which implies this has actually more mubalagha in it. What it means is, first He causes him to have prestige, then He thoroughly and abundantly gives him things that make his life easier and softer and relaxed. From everywhere he turns, he's got blessings and comforts and these sorts of amenities that are available to him all around. So Allah does two things for this person. One, you can think of it outside the home. The other, you can think of it inside the home. Outside the home, he's been honored. And inside the home, he's got all these luxuries and all these amenities, right? So it's personal and public. Both ways, his life is, what you would say, life is good. Life is good. He's got a good reputation and he's living a very luxurious life. But Allah calls this a very difficult test. Allah, the language here suggests, this is a very difficult test. Usually, most people, when they go through like a job loss, or poverty, or bankruptcy, or foreclosure, or sickness, loss, basically loss, then they think this is a tough test. But when life is good, you get a job, you get a promotion, you have a lot of savings, business is good, it's growing, the house is paid off, cars have been paid off, etc., etc. When finances are good, you think this is good. That's a test, but this is, I made it, I passed the test. And sometimes in the back of the corrupt mind, because the previous ayah did talk about fasad, that they increase corruption, a kind of corruption that even takes place inside the mind, is that the more you have in this dunya, maybe it's because Allah loves you more. So the more you have is a sign of the more Allah loves you, which is actually a big corruption. Allah gave some very bad people a lot of wealth. Allah gave Fir'aun a lot. Allah gave Qarun a lot. And some of these people had a lot of prestige too. They had a lot of prestige. People listened to them. People gave nobility to them. Some of the worst, most humiliated of the kuffar were the leaders of Quraysh. But as far as the Quraysh are concerned, are they humiliated or honorable? They're honorable. But who gave them that prestige and that honor? Allah did too, right? So the same things that you would think are there because Allah blessed me are actually, in the end, what is the reality of them? They are a difficult test. Now what makes this test difficult? The other test is difficult because obviously it's tough on you. Maybe it's financial, maybe it's health, maybe it's loss of family, etc. Those are difficult tests. You know what makes this test difficult? It's very hard to actually realize it's a test. That's what makes this difficult. That's why most people fail this test. That test people fail because of lack of sabr, they can't hold themselves, etc., etc. Or they complain to Allah, or they become ungrateful to Allah. This test because you forget that the fact that it's a test. But now this person, something very strange Allah Azza wa Jal puts in his, tells us that he says, فَيَقُول, then he says, what does he say? رَبِّي أَكْرَمًا. And يَقُول is mudari', it's the present tense form. And before it there's a fa, which means as a result of this honoring and these amazing luxuries and amenities and blessings that Allah has showered this person with, he over and over, on occasion, he tends to say. He doesn't say just once. يَقُولُ, it would have been فَقَالَ. In Jumla Shartiyya you can use Madi and Mudari'. But here what we find is فَيَقُولُ. In other words, he says it on occasion. Every time he finds an occasion, he says something. What does he say? He says, رَبِّي أَكْرَمًا. Now, usually in Arabic, again, I'm going to get a little bit grammatical, you would expect أَكْرَمَنِي رَبِّي, Jumla fi'liya. That's the verbal form of the sentence, is what the Arab normally uses. But this is the nominal form, the ismiya form, mubtada wa khabar. Rabbi akraman. It is in fact my Lord who has honored me. He's honored me. Now, how many things did Allah do for him? First, note this. How many things did Allah do for him? He gave him prestige, and He showered him in blessings. But when he speaks, what did he speak about? He says, my Lord has honored me. But did he make any mention of the blessings? You see? So the first problem we note is that Allah gave, but He, even on His mouth, didn't even come mention of everything Allah gave. Right? He didn't even acknowledge that Allah has also blessed me with a lot of favor and showered me up with a lot of blessings. All He mentions is this honor is God-given. And in this, there's actually a profound, profound reality that if you study the history of the world, you will find. The most corrupt people that had power in the past, like the runners of false religions and kings, you know what part of their belief was? That God honored them with that power. That they're not in that position for any other reason, but they have divine help. God is on their side somehow. Even the Fara'ina, the followers of Fir'aun, they believed that the sun god is on their side. Right? Among the Hindu traditions, you had people that believed that the stars are the ones that pick them. And in the Catholic tradition, the king was ordained by God. Right? He's doing God's work, so to speak. So as God has honored him, subhanAllah. So they considered themselves above the rest of the people, because by saying Rabbi Akraman, it's yadullu ala al-ithbat ala ghayr al-fa'il. My Lord has in fact honored me like He has not honored anyone else. He thinks of me as special. And since I'm special, naturally, as a result, I deserve all these favors. So he doesn't even mention the favors because he feels he's entitled to them. And this actually, at the very individual level, is a very sick disease. The one who gets so much from Allah starts believing that because Allah has honored him specially, that he's entitled to it. Somehow he's elite over the others. So even though he mentioned his Lord, he said Rabbi, he did mention his Lord, but even the mention of the Lord here is out of arrogance. It's not out of humility. So he says, Rabbi Akraman, oh my Lord has honored me. And now this same person, Allah Azza wa Jalla says, وَأَمَّا إِذَا مَبْتَلَاهُ. Why here? What this is a continuation. The ataf is a continuation. So it's the same human being. If and when we thoroughly test him again. How do we test him this time? فَقَدَرَ عَلَيْهِ رِزْقَهُ. Actually, I forgot to mention one thing. I'll mention at the end of this ayah for both, because it's the same for both ayah. فَقَدَرَ عَلَيْهِ رِزْقَهُ. Allah Azza wa Jalla says, how it's translated is, He restricts the provision from him, or He lessens the provision from him, or He constrains the provision from him. But that is by implication. By implication, the meaning is haraja, or naqasa, or qabida. These are words for restriction and constraint. The word used is qadara. Qadara in Arabic is to have a very precise calculation, an estimate based on very precise numbers, and to project in the future a calculation. Allah uses that word here in terms of this person's provision. He says, when we test him and we exact the calculation for his provision, in other words, when he loses his wealth, it is part of the rizq of Allah. When he had a lot of money, it was written for him. When he lost most of that money, that was also written for him. Allah didn't take anything away or give anything that wasn't already. إِلَّا فِي كِتَابٍ مِّن قَبْلِ أَن نَبْرَأَهَا, as He says in Surah Al-Hadid. Except that it's already in a book that's already been declared. We've already elaborated, right? So this was part of qadr. Before Allah even tells us what He says, He tells us what we're supposed to be thinking. The rizq that comes our way is not some special exception to the rule. This was written for us, and the rizq that leaves us is also part of what was not written for us. That morsel of food was not meant to go in our mouth. So فَقَدَرَ عَلَيْهِ رِزْقَهُ. That's how Allah says He takes his wealth away. He calculates, He exacts the calculation for him. Now He says, فَيَقُولُ رَبِّي أَهَانًا. Then He says, it is my Lord who has, and the word ahanan from ihana, which means to actually make an effort to humiliate someone out of animosity against them. So what this person is saying is, my Lord has humiliated me, but in parentheses it means it is because He hates me, or somehow He's so angry at me for something apparently I can't figure out what it is. I don't know why He's doing this to me. That sort of attitude. That entire attitude is captured when He says, ahanan. Now, the comment I forgot to make that should be made here is a very, in the concept of a dhikr wal hadf in the Arabic language, in grammar. You can spell a word with a full spelling and you can spell it with partial spelling. So here we find akraman. But grammatically we say akramani. فَحُذِفَتِ الْيَاء. The ya was taken away. Here we say ahanan. But normally we don't say ahanan in Arabic. We say ahanani. There's a ya there. Now first of all, this is part of the style of the surah. Because there was another word in the beginning where the ya was taken away. Remember? وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا يَسْرِ. It was وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا يَسْرِي. Right? But because the night isn't supposed to stroll, it is unique that Allah makes the night take a stroll. It is unusual, so the unusual spelling is used. That's part of the eloquence of the word there. Here, the hadf is used to actually make an exclamation mark. This is the conclusive thing. I don't want to add any more. This is all there is to it. This is in fact how to understand my situation. So he says, my Lord has honored me. In other words, He's honored me, I don't want to hear anymore. End of discussion. I know exactly what's going on, my Lord has honored me. And you will meet people like that who will believe certain things, and if you try to give them evidence and reason and reminder, before you even open their mouth, they don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it. They've made up their mind. Similarly, there's a person who's bent upon complaining, Allah has humiliated me. He said, no, you shouldn't say that. You shouldn't talk like that about Allah Azza wa Jal. It's a test. No, I don't know, bro. You don't understand. He's humiliated me. He's made up his mind. This person has made up his mind out of sheer frustration. So what did they associate honor with? When people respect you and when people give you blessings. By the way, the next ayah did not talk about ikram and it didn't talk about tan'eem. It didn't talk about honoring or giving blessings. It talked about rizq. What we learned from that is, what is our rizq? It's two things. It's all the physical blessings Allah gives us and also the honor. The respect that people show us is also part of the rizq. Is also part of the provision. And so when that is taken away, for this person and the people around him apparently, the only thing that makes you respectable is your wealth. And when you don't have wealth, you're not respectable. So he feels humiliated when he doesn't have wealth. Actually our kids start thinking like that. We're actually starting to train our kids subconsciously even to think like that. So if they dress a certain way, if they don't wear certain brand names, if they wear a certain kind of simple shoe as opposed to an elaborate shoe, if they don't get that book bag that everybody else got, right? If they don't have that video game system, they only have the outdated older one. If you're, I said this last time, if your parents drive an older car, then the teenage kids will ask you to, or even the elementary school, they'll ask you to drop you off around the corner. Like don't drop me off in front of the school, because that's a humiliation. It's a kind of humiliation, right? What do they associate honor and humiliation with? With what you own. Similarly, I just live in an apartment, I don't own a home. I'm not going to invite anybody because it's so embarrassing. Right? Or the wife will say, why would you want to invite someone to our little studio apartment? It's so embarrassing. Right? What are we associating honor and humiliation with? What we own. And these are things we say to each other all the time. This is not some abstract, these kuffar in Quraysh were so evil. This is what we do all the time. Muslims do this all the time. We talk like this all the time. Right? So here Allah is teaching us, this is the character of insan. Now insan, Allah didn't say kafir, He said insan first of all, which means all human beings tend to have this attitude. The other thing is we should never forget the root origin of the word insan. Like for example, Al-Farra comments, nasiya. It comes from nasiya, he forgot. He forgot where he came from. He forgot what the truth is. He forgot what his master is. He forgot, even if he remembers his master, he forgot what the relationship with his master is supposed to be. You and I aren't entitled to anything if He's our master. All of His things are gifts. When He gives them, it's His gift. When He doesn't give them, it wasn't ours to begin with. No room to complain. If you were entitled to something, you can complain. But if you accept He's your master, there's no room to complain because you're not entitled to anything. He's the master. He's entitled to everything. You're entitled to nothing. So everything He gives is a gift. It's a humility that dawns on the person. But when they have a corrupt relationship with their Lord, then this sinks in. And the first step with shaitan, the first step is to complain about Allah, He's humiliated me. You know what the next step after that is? Rebelling against Allah. Why should I listen to Him after He humiliated me? Right? I'll make money my way. I'll go into the haram. Why? Because He didn't let me earn through the halal. He was, I wasn't making enough, I couldn't pay this, I couldn't get that, now I'm making enough, So you actually openly now rebel against Allah. Remember, Tughyan was mentioned before, this exceeding rebellion. But now Allah told us where that journey begins. It begins with a corrupt attitude about Allah and the things you own and the things you don't own. You think those are humiliation and honor. Allah Himself says, وَمَنْ يُهِنِ اللَّهُ فَمَا لَهُ مِن مُكْرِمٍ. Whoever Allah dishonors, whoever Allah humiliates, you're not going to find anyone to honor them. You think you'll find honor in other things. But if Allah has taken honor away, you won't find it in wealth or health and nothing. There are some of the wealthiest people in the world are also the most humiliated. Bernie Madoff. Extremely wealthy, but extremely humiliated, right? This is the case. And there are people who have next to nothing, but Allah honors them in a way you can't speak about them and they don't have massive wealth to show for themselves or enormous assets. But Allah honors them because they do Allah's work and they understand, the slaves of Allah. So may Allah change our attitudes by means of these ayat. Now at the end of this was insan, the human being.